The Paradise Cause Movement. Cause movement. It would seem to follow that if there's this universal principle of knowledge, then this would serve as cause for the universal movement and all things knowledge. No more fighting for this or that right, to correct this or that injustice, or taking sides in a conflict, and so on. Simply an all-encompassing or overarching cause to guide all movements. Something like one cause fits all movements. This doesn't mean that everything is off the shelf and ready for consumption. This would still require expertise in the subject matter and the creative aspect of applying the universal principle to all individual cases of interest in the social arena. Briefly, as cause S is/becomes Movement-DRP with beliefs D, values R, interests P. Gone will be the times of the Tower of Babel of social causation movements. The Holy and the Land. The world of nations and the Holy Land of Israel are entangled as world is holy/land Israel DRP. The problems of Israel are but a reflection of those of the world. Like in the Torah, the fate of the Bnei Yisrael, children of Israel, is tied to that of humanity. Finding the way to understand the teaching is the solution to the world as much as it unravels the Torah itself. Pre-October the 7th. War is irrational, though it has its own rules of engagement. My advice is not to take sides cheering. The best approach is to step back from the event horizon of the Black Fall. The proposal is the 53I Constitution to resolve the judicial overhaul in Israel. Same before as after. Why is the world just as broken before as after the revelation of the Torah teaching to Moses at Mount Sinai? It mattered because the teaching was precisely to empower us to do the job on earth. Maybe because there was a piece missing in the puzzle? This could explain the Messiah hypothesis of someone coming from the future with a missing fragment. But if one claims unicity of the Torah as reflection of the unicity of the Creator, then this is dismissed outright. This then leaves the other possibility of something missed, but which it was not missing. Missing something is not the same thing as something is missing. The quest is then for the missing part which isn't missing. This missing piece, yet not missing, is Moses' Coup. Short and long. There are short and long versions. The short is Creator S of/the creation DRP. The long version is Creator S of creative/creature of creation DRP with spiritual D, mental R, physical P. Church-state separation. Today's world is fractured into church and state. The state ultimately springs from Greece, while the church from Israel. As precautionary measure, they were separated to keep people from killing each other. The wars were avoided, but the substance of the question at issue was never addressed, much less resolved. The question is how to put them together again in this day and age to make a whole. Well, you don't have to put them together haphazardly unless you want to provoke a short circuit. It's obvious that they belong together and not separate. We know it in an ideal world, yet cannot seem to figure a way to put them together in the real one. So we keep them separate in the meantime. But what proof is there that they should be separate in the first place? One thing is not having the proof to separateness, and quite another that its absence is proof of its separation. The unwanted consequence of this separation is legitimizing monodualism as the way of the broken world. Coup d'etat. There was a judicial coup d'etat in Judaism by sagism when introducing monodualism and generating the dual Torahs, namely oral Torah and the written Torah. Once in power, sagism as Supreme Court, along with the influence of Hellenism, came up with Messianism as an outer wall of defense of sorts. Locality and non-locality. Torah beliefs were local. At first, deities were national. There wasn't a universal deity or creator. There had been a previous destruction of the temple in Jerusalem by the Babylonians and exile of its creative and wealthy class. But then the pantheons were of local gods. All that the conquerors wanted was to bring productive people to work for them, pay taxes, and provide soldiers for its army. Other than that, they didn't care about their religious beliefs. Each nation had its own pantheon of gods and not to be shared with foreigners. Only Greece, besides having their own pantheon for their people like all other nations, had additionally a universal culture to offer the conquered nations. Rome was even worse, imposing cultural beliefs and worship of their pantheon. All this ended in the destruction of Jerusalem and of the Second Temple. Before Greece, there were only national deities, but starting with it, they had a universal worldview called Hellenism, which clashed directly with the religious beliefs of the conquered peoples. Greece had their own pantheon of gods, but that was solely of local interest to their people back home. It wasn't for exportation like philosophy in the new worldview. Jewish democracy. Zion, Israel, works in defensive mode and on offensive mode when no one is watching. All that changed on October 7, 2023 with the Gaza conflict. Israel isn't just another nation as Zionism claims. The role of the Satan is to highlight contradiction in the argument of Zion-Israel. But is it Zion-Israel or is it Zion-Jacob? Sinai Israel struggles to prevail while Jacob Israel takes advantage of opportunity for real estate gain. The contradiction in Jewish democracy of Zion Israel can only be resolved by going back to basics. But we cannot return to basics because the faith tells us that Ravism knows best what the Torah says, not anybody else. On the one hand, Ravism, and on the other, church-state separation. So we are at an impasse. The only solution is to reject Ravism and search for the way to link church and state without causing a short circuit. Zion, Jacob, and Sinai, Israel. The church is / separation state DRP imperative. Israel as Zion, Jacob is lost. But there's still Israel as Sinai is / separation Zion DRP. Zion, Jacob as Jewish democracy contradicts church-state separation, the postulate for peace in the West. What is church-state separation? Is it a principle, a hypothesis, a tenet, a doctrine? Is church/states the practice of principle or the principle of practice? Church/state separation. Church/state separation was an expedient measure taken to live in peace and avoid wars. How to turn this norm into a principle? Church is / state DRP with imaginary D, complex R, real P. Triad within a triad. Church creator S, separation S, creation state DRP. Keep church and state separate until you figure how it combines. Church/state practice of principle of practice of church/state separation. The church/state separation practice as principle states that Israel cannot be church and state. It's either the universal or else it's a particular, but not both. That's a contradiction that the Satan detected. Sinai/Zion separation is the same as church/state separation as cases of S/DRP of PaRaDi. From and the. The letter Lamed El means from and signifies from the side / of the creator S to the side of creation DRP. Recall that the highest letter in the Hebrew alphabet is Lamed El, 30 T's, and that the one letter is Alef A, creator, and that together it is used to signify the creator El. Like in Elohim, power or powers or power of powers. Thus, the Lamed El is marker indicating originating from the point side of the / of the creator / creation to the origin side of creation of the point origin. On the other hand, the Ha-H means the and would signify already being on the side of creation as in creator / creation. By the way, in Gematria, Aleph Lamed AL comes across as 1 plus 30 equals 31, gives 3 plus 1 gives 4, or door. As teacher, by example, the creator confirms S/DRP. From sign onto hand. The sign in Deuteronomy 6:8 refers to Moses' cue at Genesis 1:1a/Aleph. Sign Ot. Aleph is Vav V Taf DRP with T D A R V P. Recall that Aleph A 1, Vav V 6 Taf T 400. It all adds up as 1 plus 6 plus 400 gives 407, gives 1, 1, 11, gives 2. Note that 11, 1/1 comes across as Yod Aleph, or Yod Aleph YA. That is the human Yod Y10 by the side of the creator Aleph A 1, while 2 is Bet, Be meaning house or creation. Finally, this comes across as Aleph 1S Vav 6 / Ta 400 DRP as sign, hence reappearing. The sign indicates iterative action. The following codes are from Deuteronomy 6, 8-9 and 11-20. D6, 8. Bind them from a sign onto your hand, and there will be drippings between your eyes. Comment. The sign refers to PaRaDi and is instructing us to apply it. In response to any questions, the answers will appear shortly at the inner or third eye between the eyes. D6, 9. And inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Comment. This compares to the next one with Deuteronomy 11:20, where the mezuzot is spelled with Vav V. In either case, it refers to doorposts as what is standing and framing things all around. In Deuteronomy 6:8, if Deuteronomy 6:8 refers to doing it right and getting the corresponding instructions, then Deuteronomy 6:9 refers to applying things in and out or everywhere. Accordingly, norm S is / become our spiritual D, mental R, and behavioral P criteria. Braver Angels. The Braver Angels organization is not biased in favor of red or blue, but yes, in favor of the red-blue two-party system, pro status quo and against change for the better, for fear it may be for the worse. Verily, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. They're promoting duocracy while thinking is democracy. The bias is at the level of civilization through no fault of their own. Braver Angels fuel polarization by having bias for red and blue out of the full spectrum. Overt and covert. The question now often contemplated is whether or not the Exodus ever happened in the succeeding narrative of the Promised Land, or if it's just Hebrew mythology. This is addressed head-on at Deuteronomy 29:28. D29:28. Quote, covert acts concern Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, our Elohim, but with overt acts, italicized, it is for us and our children, ever to apply all the provisions of this teaching. Comment. As prime definition, the Torah falls in both categories. Torah is covert / overt, Tanakh DRP, with Torah D, prophets R, writings P. It happened holistically, and it's up to us to figure how so triadically to make any sense of it. This is where the sages turned sagists by profaning the holy and are to be held accountable for the mess they got us into. In my very nature, I'm sure it did happen, and in my heart as well, though my head says otherwise, based on the lack of findings by the hands on the ground. Bouncer and middleman. Note the dots appearing above the words, quote, it is for us and for our children, in the above Deuteronomy 29:28. This is a clear statement that the overt acts don't require special qualifications, nor that there are any exceptional club membership requirements to join. Verily. The word is emet, truth. Its first appearance in the Torah occurs in Exodus 34:6. E34:6. Quote, and pass Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh before him and proclaim, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, a powers, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and truth. Comment. Let's start with Gematria to see what comes out. Emet, truth, spells out as Aleph A, 1, mute, creator, Mem, M, 40, water, Tav, T, 400, sign. Quite understandably, the accent on the first word is the letter 1, Aleph, mute, creator. Using the Q, we would get 1S/1D, 40R, 400P, since the letter Aleph A appears both as 1 and as first. But additionally, we could substitute the 1 of source for 0 of nothing is field. In this case, setting aside the 1S separated by the slash and just focusing on the remainder, we would have 441 DRP or 440 DRP as 1D or 0D, 40R, 400P by assigning according to the digit placeholders. This translates, in any case, this translates as Torah 1S slash Verily 0D reveals 40R reality 400P of the title, of course. Torah Judicial Review. This comes to mind from a different context, yet it has relevance to the case of why Jayism lost its way. The case in mind is what is known as the judicial review of the Constitution by the judicial power. My understanding is that the people is sovereign and deposits its sovereignty for safeguard in the legislative power. The legislative, as people sovereign, enacts a constitution made up of the powers of state, executive and judicial, then along the way makes laws. The role of the judicial power is to check if the secondary laws conform to the Constitution. That is, it is guardian on the constitutionality of the secondary laws. That said, the question regarding judicial review of the Constitution refers to whether the judicial power can decide on the Constitution itself. That is, once the legislative adds or detracts parts to the Constitution, it is the Constitution from then onwards. My feeling is that solely the legislative can make changes to the Constitution, and that the role of the judicial is solely to double check if secondary legislation aligns with the Constitution. Now back on topic of the role played by the sagists regarding the Torah. Moses was the legislator acting in the name of the Creator, and the Constitution is the Torah. Later came the books of the prophets and writings written after said revelation at Mount Sinai. The role of the sages is to check if the secondary books align with the Torah, but not to alter the Torah in any way, shape, or form. The Torah is the Constitution of Israel. But what happened where the sages did just that? The sages turned sagists decided they would be convenient to inherit the authority of Moses by changing the Torah. To do that, they enacted on the Constitution of Israel from unicity of the Torah into duality of Torahs, as written Torah and oral Torah. And for the connection which Moses had with the Creator, they came up with the coming of the Messiah. Not bad for a bestseller for theology fiction plot. Constitution for Israel. Israel already has a constitution in the Torah. There is no Israel without the Torah and no Torah without Israel. But fast forward 3,000 plus years to the present, Israel needs a regular Greek-style constitution like everybody else. No trade-off required nor accepted. The challenge is how to get out of this straitjacket in deep waters inside a cage and survive the trial. It's easy once you're acquainted with Moses' Coup. Simply design the codex according to the scroll. Any need to say more? Try the 53I Triad State Constitution consisting of 5 powers, 3 votes per person, and tutored infant suffrage. This is the Torah. Where does it say in the Torah or the religious service, quote, this is the Torah that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh gave to Moses? Nomadic people. Bear in mind when studying the Torah that it was given to a nomadic shepherd people, past the hunter-gathering stage, but previous to agriculture and settling down in cities. They would trade their animal products in exchange for agricultural foodstuffs from the surrounding communities. Havdalah. Havdalah separation is a Jewish religious ceremony that marks the symbolic end of the Shabbat and ushers in the new week. This very well corresponds to the slash in PaRaDi /SE or paradise / DE SE. Remember and observe. Here we will quote similar verses. Exodus 28-11. Remember the Shabbat day and keep it holy. Comment. This is the original citation. In Deuteronomy 5:12-15. Observe the Shabbat day and keep it holy as your Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim has commanded you. Comment. This is the replicated citation. No change from Sahor, remember, to Shemot, observe, plus the accompanying reminder in closing as if backsliding to the original. Shabbat time sanctuary. What is the meaning of the Shabbat being a sanctuary of time? Listen to the Shema Yisrael, listen Israel, is the affirmative expression of silence of the mute letter Alef A of Hebrew corresponding to the Creator, in Deuteronomy 6:4, of course. Judaism has a lot of credit and blame for the tragedy of its people, for the diaspora, and ever since the last 2,000 years plus. Rebuilding Jerusalem and Jericho the day after. Translation of prayers. I'm studying the Mishkan prayer book and finding out that the translation is of little help. I imagine that the translations are suited to today's tastes and not a literal translation of the original Hebrew text. The problem in doing things this way is that the original intention of the Hebrew authors is sanitized by Western norms of Greek and Roman envoys. It is unintelligible. The gist is lost in translation. What is gained in information is lost in knowledge. The worldviews are quite different. Is the Greek missing the residue? Does the Hebrew original have it? Yes and yes, respectively. The archaic original civilizations had it, the succeeding ones of antiquity didn't, not to mention later and contemporary ones. From to. It says, quote, bind from the sign onto your hand, Deuteronomy 6:8. This strange way of saying things instead of bind the sign to your hand is because the sign comes from nothing. It isn't something already here in creation, but rather proceeds from the Creator. And we're, as it were, the creative creatures receiving and playing with the ball in the field. This empowers us to speak with our hearts and not to our hearts, as in to our heads. Then happens a dripping between our eyes, product of seeing with our eyes and not with the eyes on our heads. Then happens the dripping between our eyes, product of seeing with our hearts and not with the eyes on our heads. Prayer and meditation. The meaning is distorted, curved, and twisted in the translation. Mindful prayer is a poor substitute for heartful meditation, as in Deuteronomy 6:8. The sequence in the Torah was sacrificed so as to be understood by those times. Meditation for better times, and afterwards went downhill to prayer due to both internal conquest, but mostly due to misguided, self-appointed heirs of the tradition stemming from Moses, the sagists. Totafot Rashi. Rashi, the celebrated Torah commentator, teaches that the word Totafot in Deuteronomy 6:8 and Exodus 13:16 is actually a contraction of two words that come from two different ancient languages. Quote, since they consist of four compartments, they are called Totafot. Tat in the Katfi language is two. Pat in the Afriki language is two. This seems to be saying multiplication of sorts, as 2 times 2 gives 4 compartments, or adding 2 plus 2 gives 4, though not clear. Rashi goes on to record that the word Totafot also has Hebrew roots related to an obscure word that is translated as speaking. He concludes his interpretation by stating that whoever sees the Totafot on someone else's forehead will remember the great miracles of the Exodus and will speak about it. It is in reference to the number of the scriptural sections contained in them that they are termed Totafot, for Tot, 2 in Katpi, and Fat in Afriki 2. In Sanhedrin 4b, Rashi on Exodus 13:16. Totafot Sefaria. In any case, doing the research on Sefaria, I came up with the following finding to settle a matter once and for all. Firstly, it says that the word Totafot, drippings, is composed of two roots. On the one hand, Tot, made up of the same two letters, Tetet, denotes 2 in Katpi, and on the other hand, Fot is made of two letters, Petet, in Afriki, likewise denotes 2. This is saying that the word Totafot, drippings, is composed of 4 categories of 2 sets each. This suggests that the solution to the missing piece is precisely on the one hand as secret S/discovered D, and on the other hand as reflection R, plain P, and jointly as PaRaDi's teaching. Totafot Tefillin. The so-called Tefillin, it denotes as consisting of 4 houses compartments which are called Totafot, for Tot, 2 in Kati, and in Afriki Pat denotes 2, Sanhedrin 4b. Menachem ben Serug, however, placed it in the same section and gave it the same meaning as, and speak Hataf to the south, and as Micah 2:6, speak ye Tatifo not, so that it would be an expression denoting speaking and correspond to Saharon. It's tricky, so we'll leave it there. Bang and bangs. It will appear in the writing. Bang and bangs. How many bangs are or were there? Creator is / creation DRP with spiritual dark D, mental gray R, physical light P. If this is the case, then dark Big Bang D, gray baby bang R, light baby bang P. By dark is meant impenetrable or invisible, and likewise by light is meant penetrable or visible. Alef and Bet. The Torah actually starts with Alef A, just that it's a mute letter, and passes as understood to the wise at heart. The first sounded word of the book of Genesis starts with Bet B, as in Bereshit, in beginning of. The trick is that starting with Bet B begs the question of why, which invariably leads us to Alef A. There you have it. The residue is universal and an open heart to the pure of heart, and an open secret to the pure of heart, yet missed by all others with ulterior motives or else multitasking. Well, this residue is the universal principle of knowledge without which there will be no humanity to begin with. It's hard and soft-wired in us as human beings, dating from Adam and the Garden of Eden. It is constitutive of being human. My knowledge of this period is minor, but suffice to say that it's residue, and there is no need for encyclopedic knowledge, which is employed in schooling, unfortunately, only to serve to count trees and miss the forest. The baby bang should be there to remind us of the one letter Aleph A before the first letter Bet B of the Big Bang. That is creation 1S, creative / creature creation, first and DRP. And inserted so as not to be noticed is chapter 1 in Hebrew as chapter Aleph A. And this is immediately followed by the first word of the Torah, Bereshit, in beginning of. Overall is Aleph / Bereshit A / in beginning of. Says who? Iterative. Says who? This refers to the argument of Aristotle of the impossibility of returning to the first cause as says who. The says who refers one to the previous says who and so on ad infinitum, which for us finite creatures is out of the question since our mortality is short-lived. Moses, on the other hand, says that while that may very well be the case, yet the conclusion of the argument for no creator, since there is no proof of creation, doesn't follow in the least. That's because there is a return to the first That's because there is a return to the first cause. That's because there is not a return to the first cause. That's because there is a return to the one cause, not the first cause, and substantively precedes it. So then, says who? Who says? And Moses provides us with a cue to the puzzle. The corruption stems from reason itself. There is reason as one and reason as first. In algebra, is reason cardinal is / becomes reason ordinal DRP with wisdom D, knowledge R, understanding P. Creation, revelation, and redemption. The official narrative of mainstream religion is that creation is God's relationship to the world. Revelation is God's relationship with us. Then, when we apply revelation to creation, the result is redemption, the world in which God's will and ours coincide. Jay's tradition is built around three axes: creation, revelation, and redemption. Traditionally, these have been seen as the making of the world, the giving of the Torah, and the coming of the Messiah. Each also tells us something about our attitude and conduct along the way. The problem is non sequitur. This argument is just as flawed as Aristotle's impossibility of regression to a first cause to the first cause. Therefore, there is no creation, no creator. Just that in this case, it takes the form that given that revelation isn't working, there must be a piece missing, which will be brought later on by the figure of the Messianism. But as we pointed out before, that missing a piece isn't the same as a piece is missing. Back and contents. If what's in the back is rotten, then its contents are spoiled. If the container is rotten, then everything contained therein is corrupt as well, inclusive but not limited to the state, religion, science, and technology. If the whole is broken, then the constitutive pieces are fractured. If the vase is broken, then you have the vase in pieces. The accessory follows the fate of the principal. Forward or backward slash. Let's now take up the convention of whether to use the forward or the backward slash in the particular case of interest, namely whether to call this initiative the PaRaDi backward slash SE cause forward slash movement, or the PaRaDi forward slash SE cause backward slash movement. What substantiates things is above, with things substantiated underneath. Much like the heaven, which is above the earth, yet we say that the heaven substantiates the earth. Maybe simply meaning the same, yet use whichever is more visually convenient in the language of choice. This refers to language with subject adjective like Spanish, or adjective subject order like English, not to mention the added complication of right to left and left to right languages like Hebrew and Spanish or English respectively. Consistency is recommended using both towards and away from the secret sought S, which is identified with cause, namely PaRaDi backward slash SE cause forward slash movement, or the PaRaDi forward slash SE cause backward slash movement. In the order given, the slashes curve outward and diverge, or else inward and converge. Proof. Can anything be proven? Only if one accepts that the Torah is revelation, not otherwise. And even then it's tricky, not a cakewalk. The Big Bang and the Baby Bang are one and the same, or if you prefer, are flip sides of the same coin. The argument can be broken down into three basic parts: the conclusion, the premises, and the assumptions. That is to say, as argument S / assumptions D, premises R, conclusion P. You need to have some skin in the game to play ball. 1 and 1,000. The letter Alef A signifies head, number 1. Creator is mute and glottal stop and stands for the creator. It is pronounced as Alef A, which as word signifies 1,000. That is, the number 1 followed by a triad of 0, 0, 0, 0. What is this telling us? Recalling 1s/000 DRP. The 1 is holy, and as nothing is separated by a slash from the profane, which ultimately adds up to a triad of nothings, of zeros. This harkens back to the 100% of missing the point up front and ending with the remaining double 0%. This is the case with R-ism. Greek dis-revelation. Is classical Athens thought original or derivative? Does it start with the pre-Socratics? If not original, then where did it get their ideas from? And if derivative, from when, where, and how so? Did Greece have a revelation too? How many revelations were there? If one, then how does it connect with the revelation to Moses? After all, they were not that far apart, of 1,000 years. But which came first? Israel came first by 1,000 years or so. Either a solution or none at all. Classical Greece is best there is, or resignation, or else the Messiah solution. Oral Torah and Messianism is coming up with a knockoff. Israel and Greece. Ultimately, things are based time-wise from earliest to oldest, starting with Torah Israel, then pre-Socratic Ionia, and then classical Athens. My suspicion is that there was a backslide from Israel to Greece, splashing is at oral Torah and Messianism. Yes, that means that Mosaic thought tripped through the sages of rabbinism onto sagists of corrupt mono-dualism. The face-up sages are the sages on the flip side underneath. They pass for ducks by all measures and are sincere at that, all product of a collective oversight and consensual complacency of job benefits and privileges. Clergy is bad and lay are wrong in following. At one point, we're all part of the corruption in the back, and none out of it as elucidation. Everything is in everything. You cannot clean anything unless and until you clean everything. And the only place and time to start is at the beginning and a little behind. Sign and hand. Sign or signal or cue. It plays the feminine role insofar as the hand plays the masculine or upper and lower isosceles triangles of the start or shield of David, Deuteronomy 6:8 and Exodus 13:16. One size fits all. One principle fits all in the sense that one universal principle covers all generic and specific cases of knowledge. Firmament, horizon. My writings are past the horizon, out of sight, too advanced for the times, and for my own good, I might add in passing. I was idealist at heart out of conviction, questing, searching for the answer to the quest. I always went through life without direction, not seeming to care about the news topics of the week, without goals, just only one goal. I never thought in terms of job and career, always trusting my luck from falls like a feline, uncompromising yet easily thrown out of course by drives and ambition, but always haphazardly pursuing the call. Perhaps reading philosophers too early in life imprinted in me the idea of universality. I never mounted to much because I was going for everything. I fell short until the book titled PaRaDi, subtitled Human Science 101, 2016, when I made the breakthrough of finding in Genesis 1:1a/Alef the Coup to the Torah. I then settled at home with the discovery and mined it as best I could. My works reflect my quest of pursuing the universal principle of knowledge out of which derive all the rest. Sagists, and Messiah. If the oral Torah is the case, then they are sages. If it isn't, then they're sagists. The concerned are the unintended consequences. If there are sages or sagists, then there is a sage of sages or sagist of sagists. These written as sages with S or sages with S, with ending S in italics, or perhaps written as sages apostrophe S, sages apostrophe with ending S in apostrophe. In any case, this sage of sagists or sagist of sages would then be the Messiah, I imagine. The problem is that if there are sages, then who is anybody to question their findings? Worse still, if there are sages, then that would make the sage of sages be the Messiah. Who is anybody to question the Messiah? In any case, would it be sagism or sagistism? Identity principle. The Torah is the Torah. The Torah is not the written Torah and the oral Torah. The Torah is the one Torah. The Torah is not the dual written Torah and oral Torah. In plain English, listen Israel, the Torah is ours, the Torah is one, and not, hey Israel, the Torahs are ours and the Torahs are oral and written. Messianic Age. The Messianic Age isn't about the coming of the Messiah. Rather, it's about our being and becoming Messiahs. Lowercase, in following the Messiah text of Genesis 1:1a/Alef. About the author. Ricardo Turullols-Bonilla studied physics at UT Austin, mathematical physics at Imperial College London, graduate philosophy at UNAM Mexico City, MBA at U Iberoamericana Mexico City, and studied Kabbalah on his own in Austin. This last one proved that there is no need for tutelage to the Torah, which is always open to the heart. His books are found at Amazon and his videos at YouTube, plus podcasts elsewhere. Amazon, YouTube, and podcasts. Title, Friends of Dialogue. Subtitle, The Quest of Keeping the Heart, A Philosophy of Practice, 2005. Title, Dialogue of Friends. Subtitle, Making Sense of the Human Spirit, A Practice of Philosophy, 2005. Title, Triads. Subtitle, The Pre-Socratic Origins of Dialogical Science, 2012. Title, PaRaDi. Subtitle, Human Science 101, 2016. Title, The Principle of World Caring. Subtitle, Peace by Wholeness, 2019. Title, Saving Creation, The Baby Bang of PaRaDi Civilization, 2022. Title, The Sweet Spot. Subtitle, On the Obvious, All Revealing Yet Hiding in Plain View, 2023. Videos at the handle on YouTube, books at the handle at Amazon. Yours truly, Ricardo, and GD bless.